Hey ladies, right then, so what we're going to do is talk about your posture when you are in the office or sitting at your desk, okay? Because the reality of it is, I think the most recent stats are 66% of the population are now sitting for 8 hours a day or more with their work. And so obviously with the fact that we're more sedentary, and just, let's say, less mobile, that means that we have to make sure that our postures are more appropriate, because otherwise what will happen is our muscles will become weak, they'll become lazy, and then as the tone decreases in the muscles, it'll hit the weekend, and then we think that we can garden and lay a patio or fix a fence or whatever it is. And basically, because we've got such poor tone in the muscles, it means that our backs go really, really quickly. Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to do is just show you on my office chair what you can do in order to improve the posture to start off, and I'll explain a little bit why as well. Okay, so most office chairs, if I come down a little bit, most office chairs are quite flat, all right, when they're in their neutral position. But the problem with that is what you're going to do is when you sit on it, you're going to naturally kind of slump. So if I show you, okay, so if I'm in it, naturally I'm going to want to do that in order to feel comfortable and relaxed. So I'm curling up and going into more of a flexed posture, which basically means that you're kind of going into the fetal position. But the rounding means that the head is going to jut forwards more, and then obviously then we're going to go for our mouse, all right? But if we tilt the chair forwards, now let me grab here, so I'm going to tilt it forwards, then what happens is, if I was to carry on curling, I would feel like I'm going to headbutt my computer. So naturally what I'm going to do to stop that from happening is I'm going to sit upright, which does mean that I am now nowhere near the back, but it does mean that I've still got the arch in my low back, but I'm now actively using my muscles. And because this is more upright, that means that my shoulders are going to drop down more naturally, and I'm going to maintain a better posture. So let me show you. I'm going to take it back to the other position. Hang on, it's hard work getting this into the other position, but I'm going to do a tilt like that. Okay, so that's more straight, and so naturally if I was to do that, I've got to hold that position because my knees now are in a level with my hips, or more level. Okay, so to hold myself upright, I've got to really force it, I've got to think about it, so naturally I want to slump. Okay, so like I said, if I do the tilt, whoop, like that, knees are lower than my hips. You want it at about 130 degrees angle between your torso and your knees, because then it takes the most amount of strain off the low back. Like I say, it's forcing me forward, so naturally I'm going to come back, and then the shoulders drop down. Okay, so this is the most ideal situation for you, so that you take the strain off the disc. At 130 degrees, that's the lowest amount of pressure that's going to be on your disc. Okay, and then also, because you're not using this, it means that your muscles are actively recruited, and so you're going to have better tone when it comes to the weekend. Okay, or whatever activities you want to do, but you get what I mean. Right then, so let's now talk about the height of the chair when you're talking about when you're working at your desk. Okay, so I'm going to scooch you round like this. Let's see if you can see. All right, okay, so now I've gone a little bit too far. Right, so when it comes to most desks, what tends to happen is desks are still designed for if we're writing. So because they're designed for what happens is we end up at 90-degree angles as if we were going to write. But we're dealing with computers these days. Most of the time we're on computers. We're not really writing very much. So the rules have gone and changed as a result of this. So what we want to do is make sure that we have some clearance between our elbow and the desk, so that then our shoulders can drop down and go to our mouse. Okay, otherwise what's going to happen is we're going to hitch to move. All right, so here we go. If I go up high, I think that's high as mine's going to go, but that means that then I've got the clearance. Okay, so my shoulders will actually relax and drop down to my mouse, rather than if I'm lower. Let me take it lower because then you can see. Whoops. Okay, so now I'm going to have to hitch that little bit in order to move. And it's not the amount of hitching, it only has to be a small hitch in the shoulder, but it's the prolonged periods of time that we do that for that then takes its toll. And then we end up with the aches over the tops of the shoulders and then into the neck itself as well. Okay, so I hope you find this useful. One of the other things that I would say is, if you can't tilt the seat of your chair forward so that your hips are, well, your knees are lower than your hips, then buy a seat wedge. So a seat wedge will knock you back about 20 quid. So they don't have to be really expensive. Don't go any cheaper than that. They tend to be a little bit naff. They're plasticky and but 20 to 22 pounds, about right. You can go up to as high as about 50, 75. Don't bother, it's not worth it. So around about the 20, 22 quid mark, you tend to find they're of a nice quality. And you need an 11-degree wedge when you're talking about your office chairs. If you're talking about the car, then you're talking 8 degrees, but we'll talk about that one another time. Okay, so I hope you find this useful, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell your friends that there's lots of hints and tips on their way. Speak to you soon. Bye.